که ما بیرون از زندان اون رو سالهاست تجربه کردیم اشاره میکنم.
جنبش زنان ساخته شده بود از 150 سال مبارزه تا الان. طاهره قرةالعین کشته میشه به خاطر اینکه حجاب نداشته باشه و در کنار مردها بتونه به فعالیت اجتماعی ادامه بده. ما میرسیم به دورانی که ایران میخواد مدرنیته رو تجربه کنه. زنان زیادی در کنار مردای مشروطه خواه تلاش کردند. متاسفانه هنگامی که قانون نوشته شد که زنان حق رأی ندارند و زنان و کودکان و مجانین و دیوانگان رو در یک سطح گرفتن.
زنان ایران حدود 60 سال قبل، حتی قبل از زنان سوئیس، حق رأی به دست آوردن، به مجلس رفتن. ایران کشوری است که زنهاش تحصیل کرده تر از مردها هستند. بیش از 60% دانشجویان دانشگاه‌های ایران دخترند.
ناگهان انقلاب میشه. زن اجازه نداره، بعضی از مشاغل ممنوع برای زنها و چند همسری قانونی میشه. حق طلاق از زن گرفته میشه. حق سفر بدون اجازه شوهر از زن گرفته میشه. بعد از انقلاب زنان به خیابون میان در اعتراض به حجاب اجباری.
دولت ایران زنان رو در ردیف اول اپوزیسیون میبینه، با اونها رو متهم میکنه به اقدام علیه امنیت ملی.
بعد از اون در دهه 70 زنی به نام هما دارابی تو میدون تجریش خودشو آتیش زد در اعتراض به حجاب اجباری. اکنون اعتراضات دخترای خیابان انقلاب نشانه شده از استقامت زنان ایرانی که برای گرفتن حقوق خودشون به پا خواستن.
فیدا موحدی اولین دختری بود که تو خیابون انقلاب بالای یه سکویی رفت و حجابش رو از سرش برداشت. بیش از 29 دختر مبادرت به برداشتن روسریاشون و گذاشتن اونها برای تکه جوری کردن.
It's a punishable crime to be unveiled in public. According to the laws, Sharia laws in Iran, you get lashes. You get jailed and fined. But more important than this, you won't be allowed to get an education from the age of 7 if you take off your headscarf. You won't be allowed to get a job. You won't be allowed to live in your own country.
This may sound like a fictional dystopia, but it is not. This is the reality for millions of women and girls in Iran, where the state heavily controls women's bodies. Under the country's compulsory veiling laws, women and girls, even those as young as 7, are forced to cover their hair with a headscarf against their will. Women who do not are treated as criminals by the state. Iran's morality police place the entire female population, 40 million women and girls, under surveillance. These state agents drive around the city and have the power to stop women and examine their dress, scrupulously assessing how many strands of hair they are showing, the length of their trousers and overcoats, and the amount of makeup they are wearing. The punishment for being seen in public without a headscarf includes arrest, a prison sentence, flogging or a fine. All this for the crime of exercising their right to choose what to wear. Even when women cover their hair with a headscarf, they could still be deemed as having fallen short of forced veiling laws if they are, for example, showing a few strands of hair, or their clothes are perceived as being too colorful or close-fitting. There are countless stories of the morality, police slapping women across the face, beating them with batons and throwing them into police vans because of the way they are dressed. But the policing of women's bodies is not confined to the state. Iran's abusive, discriminatory and degrading forced veiling laws have enabled not only state agents but also thugs and vigilantes who feel they have the duty and right to enforce the Islamic Republic's values to harass and assault women in public. Consequently, on a daily basis, women and girls face random encounters with such strangers who beat and pepper spray them, call them whores, and make them pull their headscarves down to completely cover their hair. Courageous women's rights movement. In the last few years, a growing movement against forced veiling laws has emerged inside Iran, with women and girls performing courageous acts of defiance. They stand in public places, silently waving their headscarves on the ends of sticks, or share videos of themselves walking down the street with their hair showing, something many of us take for granted. Men have joined this movement, too. So have women who actively choose to wear hijab, because the movement is about choice. A woman's right to choose what to wear without fear of harassment, violence, threats and imprisonment. The strength and force of this movement has terrified the Iranian authorities, who have waged a sinister crackdown in response. Since January 2018, they have arrested at least 48 women's rights defenders, including 4 men. Some have been tortured and sentenced to prison terms or flogging after grossly unfair trials. Making criminals of women and girls who refuse to wear the hijab is an extreme form of discrimination. Forced veiling laws violate a whole host of rights, including the rights to equality, privacy and freedom of expression and belief. In the end, these laws degrade women and girls, stripping them of their dignity and self-worth. Among the many brave women's rights defenders who have stood up to Iran's forced veiling laws is Nasrin Sotoudeh, a prominent human rights lawyer. In March 2019, she was sentenced to a total of 38 years and 6 months in prison and 148 lashes after being convicted in 2 separate grossly unfair trials. Some of the charges against her, including inciting corruption and prostitution, stem from her work as a lawyer representing women arrested for protesting against forced veiling laws, her own opposition to forced veiling, and removing her headscarf in prison. She must serve 17 years of this sentence. In April 2019, shortly after Nasrin Sotoudeh's sentencing, Yasemin Ariani, her mother, Monireh Arabshahi, and Majgan Keshavarz were all arrested after posting a video that went viral on International Women's Day. In it, they are seen walking without headscarves through a Tehran metro train, handing flowers to female passengers. The day will come when women are not forced to struggle, Monireh Arabshahi is heard saying while Yasemin Ariani hands a flower to a woman wearing a hijab, saying she hopes to walk side by side in the street one day, me without the hijab and you with the hijab. Sources say that because of this video, Yasemin Ariani and Monireh Arabshahi are facing charges that include spreading propaganda against the system, and inciting corruption and prostitution. Vida Mubahidi has been sentenced to 1 year in prison for her peaceful protests against forced veiling. She remains in prison since her arrest in October 2018, when she staged a solo protest by standing, without a hijab, on top of a large dome structure in the middle of Tehran's Engulab Revolution Square and waving colored balloons in her hands. Vida Mubahidi was among several prisoners granted a pardon by Iran's supreme leader to mark the 40th anniversary of the 1979 revolution in February 2019, but prison authorities have refused to release her. Nasrin Sotoudeh's husband, Reza Khandan, was arrested in September 2018 after he posted Facebook messages about human rights violations in Iran, including the prosecution of women who protested against forced veiling laws. In January 2019, he and Farhad Maisami were sentenced to prison terms for their support of the women's rights movement against forced veiling. They were both convicted of spreading propaganda against the system, and gathering and colluding to commit crimes against national security, and sentenced to 6 years in prison.